Hello, I'm here with my little froggy mug of Cherry Bakewell hot chocolate because I just want to talk about books for a little bit. Love a book. What's not to love, really, about some words on a page? So yeah, I'm going to try not to spoil any major plot points, but I'll probably be talking about the themes and stuff, so I guess just use your own judgment if you haven't read the book already. Okay, so the first book I read this year was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. That was from 2024. Cyrus, our main character, is a newly sober orphaned son of Iranian immigrants to the US. He is kind of seeking meaning in his life, and that brings him to a terminally ill artist who is living out the final days of her life in a museum. I borrowed this book from the library. I actually randomly came across it on the shelf. Yeah, honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. Like, I was gripped from the very first chapter where Cyrus is working as an actor for medical exams, which I feel like was such a fun way to introduce us to him as a character and like kind of subtly show us like the mental place that he was at in his life at that time. And I really enjoyed it, like as a story. I was just turning the page wanting to know what was going on, but I also loved the way that it was written. I've never seen a book written anything like that before. The perspective changes a lot, but it wasn't jarring at all. Like, it actually really added to the experience. It's just a very unique book, and I loved that every single character pretty much was a flawed person. It like was very much shown to be so. I actually think it made you like the characters more, and they did feel like real people, actually. Then I read another book from 2024, The Coin by Yasmin Zaher. So The Coin is about a wealthy Palestinian woman who's living in New York. She focuses a lot on her style and the way she presents herself and her cleanliness, hygiene rituals. She teaches at a school for underprivileged boys, and she has some unconventional teaching methods, shall we say. We kind of read about some of her relationships and her childhood memories as this put together life that she has starts to unravel. I do actually have a copy of this book, but I loved it so much that I had to share it. So I've lent it to my friend for her to read. I was constantly on edge reading this. Like, I needed to know what was going to happen next, and the chapters are very short, so it was really easy to just read a little bit and keep reading a little bit more and then keep reading a little bit more. The narrator is not very politically correct, for want of a better phrase. Yeah, I guess you really do just get the sense that she is trying to take some semblance of control over many very uncontrollable forces in her life. I love an unreliable narrator, and it really was one of those where you were just like, oh my god, what is she gonna say next? What is she gonna do next? And is she telling us the truth about all of these situations? Like, this is crazy. This one might be a like let me cook moment, but it did really remind me of a much more like readable version of American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Obviously, the narrator of The Coin does not commit crimes comparable to Patrick Bateman, although not to like spoil American Psycho, like is a pretty well-known tale at this time. But I guess like part of the point of that book is that we don't actually know in the end whether he has committed these atrocities or not, but just in the themes and like the tone that the narrator themselves has, like there's a real obsession with self-image, class and wealth, long descriptions of like these rituals and these brand names. You definitely get the sense that you're not getting the full story. You get the sense that the narrator's environment is causing them, or at least contributing to them behaving in the way that they're behaving, and there's just this loss of any sense of self and the feeling of unreality. Like, yeah, really reminded me of that book. Obviously, from a female perspective, a much shorter book, and in my opinion a much easier to read book because you don't have to read about the extremely gruesome murders of countless women. But there you go. I did really like this book, and I look forward to reading it again sometime. Next, I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. That was published first in 2022. That was another one that I like randomly came across in the library, but I'd already heard of it before, so I was like, okay, let's give that a little read. So the premise Leah has been away on a deep sea submarine mission for a very long time, and she finally returns to her wife Miri, but it soon becomes very clear to Miri that Leah has not come back as the same person that she left as. To be quite honest, next to nothing happens plot-wise in this book, but I felt compelled to keep reading it, and I very much enjoyed reading it. Like, it was very beautifully written, and it was essentially like a metaphorical exploration of grief, basically. It has a very interesting premise, and the premise is quite scary in and of itself, but actually a large amount of the horror came not just from the submarine idea, but from the faceless institutions that don't provide any help or any answers. That's very real. Miri is also just an interesting perspective to read from. She describes like this experience of like keeping herself separate from her friends despite what she's going through, and like she doesn't open up to them and she doesn't know how to speak about it. Her friends are like possibly trying to distract her, and they're like talking to her, but they're not really talking to her about what's going on. So she feels this like resentment building towards other people, and that was just an interesting dynamic that like I've not read someone like put that feeling into words before. There is like a little bit of the sense that the characters don't have any agency. Like, it often feels like they're not really making any real decisions in the book, and life is just kind of happening to them. Personally, it didn't irritate me because I think some of the horror kind of comes from that fact. But yeah, I liked it. I'm probably not desperate for a reread anytime soon, to be honest, but then I read Milly-Molly-Mandy stories by Joyce Lankester Brisley. I think this specific collection, Milly-Molly-Mandy stories, was published in 1928, but they first started to be published in 1925. Milly-Molly-Mandy is over 100 years old. The enchanting and classic adventures of a little country girl. Milly-Molly-Mandy lives in a tiny village in the heart of the countryside. She's always busy doing things, and whether she's blackberry picking with little friend Susan or keeping shop for Miss Muggins, you're sure to have fun when Milly-Molly-Mandy's around. So true. Perfect for reading aloud and sharing. Also true. I actually truly cannot believe that like the first publication of a Milly-Molly-Mandy story is now over 100 years ago. Like, they truly do not feel that dated at all. Like, I've read way more recent stories that feel more dated than this. I found this book in an Oxfam for £1.50, and honestly I almost didn't buy it because I'm like trying not to overconsume and all that, so I was really like, do I really need this? Yes, I did need it. Like, I'm so glad I bought it and read it again, because I'd forgotten how nostalgic and cozy these books are. I used to read them so much as a kid, and I even used to listen to like the audiobook on a little CD player to go to sleep. So I literally just breathed Milly-Molly-Mandy at all hours of the day. They're so community focused, joyous, cute, like heartwarming, good-natured, actually quite funny as well. Like, I could actually just read these over and over. Like, I actually just tore through the whole thing, and it wasn't even intending to like sit down and read the whole thing. I was just like, oh, it's nice to have this, I'll read one of the stories so I can remember, and then I was just like, oh my god, this is the best thing in the world. Turn page. I really need to find the rest of the collection. I think there's literally like 65 stories. I really need to read the rest of the books again soon. Hopefully I can find them secondhand so that I can read them whenever I need a little comfort read. Like, honestly, I didn't realise how much of a comfort read they would be. They actually helped me. They helped me achieve a calm state of mind. Then I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and that was 2017, and I also borrowed that from the library. This book is basically a group of Shakespearean actors at an elite American drama school. All of the 7 characters seem to have their typical roles to play both on the stage and off stage, but in the 4th year the students find themselves in their own Shakespearean tragedy, guys. I said at the start that I wasn't going to spoil major plot points of the books, but for this one, like, I truly have to revoke that because I need to talk about this book. Like, I can't say what I need to say without spoiling it, so if you want to read it, don't listen to me. Firstly, I need to say that after I read the book, I looked up like other people's reviews of it. I saw so much criticism, and let me say, I agree with every single critique. Richard behaves irrationally and it's never explained. Meredith is extremely over-sexualised. I mean, all the girls are over-sexualised, but her especially. Pip and Ren, like the girls are basically just plot devices. It does the bury your gaze trope, etc, etc, etc. I've seen it all and I'm like, yeah, that's 100% true. I can't argue with that, and I actually agree with you. And yet, somehow, I still enjoyed the book. It did read like a little bit like fanfic at times. There was literally the line, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, but I kind of didn't mind it for that because it did make me feel emotions. I was like reading it, like reacting. However, the over-sexualization of Meredith especially was kind of unbearable. Like at first I was like, wow, this author is doing a really good job of writing from a man's perspective. Because ML Rio is a woman, but truly it was giving male author. Every single character's body is described and referenced constantly, especially the girls and Meredith in particular. So I was like, nice, this is going to be the point. Like, he's going to realise that he's a bad person for sexualising her so much. Like, there's going to be fallout from the fact that they're having this supposed relationship, but he doesn't really have feelings for her. He's just been blatantly objectifying her this whole time, just like everyone else in her life. But no, apparently that was the setup for the fact that he did have genuine feelings for her. What? That is, at best, at my most generous, that is lust, not love. There was no genuine care displayed by Oliver to Meredith. Like, I'm so sorry. If you wanted us to think that he loved her, that he cared about her, why have him treat her the exact same as literally everyone else, and then just say that he's not doing that and he does care about her really? Like, where is the evidence? He literally over-sexualizes her, treats her like an object, and she's like, oh, Oliver, everyone treats me like an object except you. Are we living in the same plane of reality, girl? Like, actually makes no sense, lad. The fact that they ended up together at the end is fucking diabolical to me. Like, it makes me so fuming that Meredith is a supposedly like headstrong character, but clearly she has zero self-respect and goes back to Oliver after everything that has happened. She should not have touched him again with a 10-foot pole. Like, let's be real here. But like, R.I.P. James. Honestly, kind of fuming that he died as well. Like, if I was Oliver, I'd be fucking livid. I did all of this for nothing. I guess that is kind of like what makes it kind of a good tragedy, because I got this sense at least that it was avoidable if people had just made slightly different choices, which is the way that I feel reading Shakespeare. I know the whole point of a Shakespearean tragedy is like, it's written in the stars and it's supposed to be unavoidable. But personally, I never get that feeling reading Shakespeare. Like, realistically, it's not written in the stars, is it? It's written by some random miscommunication that you're having or some misunderstanding. To me, that's how I always feel reading Shakespeare. I'm like, Othello, there is an option for you not to behave the way that you're behaving right now that's leading to your own downfall. But maybe that's just me. Everything does feel very heightened like Shakespeare, so you can see how people are like just all misunderstanding each other. Like, it does feel quite Shakespearean in that way. But also, as someone that unfortunately went to drama school and trained as an actor, it was just quite funny to me to read about people in drama school, although it was set in America. When they had their first rehearsal in the space, I nearly lost my mind. Like, people in theatre truly need to stop referring to rooms as the space. Top 10 things I never want to hear again. Walk around the space. Stop. So this book was kind of like almost designed in a factory to be like a great trashy read for me. Apart from the whole mishandling of Meredith's character, that did actually really pissed me off. Does anyone else's nose get like itchy when they're really warm? Is that just me? Anyway, then I read the graphic novel Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero-O'Connell. That's from 2019. Another one that I happened across in the library, read it in a couple of hours. Like, I just read it in one sitting. I do like graphic novels for that. The clue's in the title. Freddie's girlfriend Laura Dean keeps breaking up with her, and she's realising maybe it's a relationship she shouldn't be prioritising right now, although she does love her. I thought it was really beautifully illustrated. Like, I loved the use of the pink as well as the black and white. I enjoyed that it was a queer story that had nothing to do with being closeted or realising that you're gay. It was just a teenage ups and downs of first love story, which I appreciated because that's something that I did not get to experience being a queer teenager. So I hope that we live in a world now where the gay youths of today can enjoy making the same mistakes as straight people. Maybe this is kind of a spoiler, but I liked that the message at the end was that love shouldn't take from you or make you a worse person. You should still be able to be a good friend and surround yourself with people that fill your cup and don't drain you. Like, I think that's a nice thing for teenagers to take away from reading about relationship drama. And my most recent read was Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. I think it was first published 2022, but the translation to English from Italian was released last year, 2025, and that was by Sophie Hughes. Another one I borrowed from the library. I had it on hold for like 2 months before I got hold of it, and someone had a hold after me as well, so like I couldn't renew the book. So she's popular. It is about... Oh my god, I need to stop itching my nose. Like, I'm behaving like I'm on something, but I don't know why I'm warm. Every time I'm warm, my nose just like overheats and gets really itchy. Another random fact, when I play the flute, the opposite happens. My nose gets freezing cold. Maybe I should whip out the flute right now. Maybe that will help me. So this book is about a young millennial couple, Anna and Tom. They are digital creatives and expats living in Berlin, and they're supposedly living this ideal life, and it would look that way from social media, but they are very dissatisfied and have this general feeling of ennui, and they lack a purpose and they lack any kind of true political activism. This story graph review that I came across put it perfectly. Is this play about us? Yeah, this play is definitely about us. This book was more of a social commentary, really, than a story. Like, the main characters are non-specific, clearly representing a general freelance millennial person rather than being individuals with their own personalities. They tend to both think the same things for the most part up until a certain point in the book. And I did like that it is very current, and it comments on social media and how we've grown distant from what's literally going on around us. And you don't have to be a digital nomad in mainland Europe to feel that way. But there is also obviously a criticism of the expat life, like living in a country where you don't really care to learn the language or meet people from the country that you've moved to. I enjoyed the book, and I think the points that it brings up are true and valid. Like, there is such a vapidness and lack of purpose to what many of us today would think is the ideal life. But in reading that, it just didn't inspire much hope within me. And I don't mean that as like a criticism of the book. I just mean, I guess it's just a bit depressing to read something like, this situation is kind of bad, full stop. I was just wondering the whole time, is there a way for these two to be happy? They don't like what they're doing, but they don't seem to want the opposite of what they're doing either. But maybe the point is that they've been convinced that they want this kind of life that they don't actually really want because of social media's idea of the pitch perfect life. Then how do they unconvince themselves, and how do they find what they want? I do not think the writer needed to answer these questions. I don't know if they are answerable questions, but they were just the questions that I had while I was reading. Can we, in this postmodern age, truly be happy when we know so much about the world and other people and other ways of living that we can always compare to our own and find fault with our own? I do feel like I want to read it again and think more about like what it was saying and the points that it brought up. Some of it hit the nail on the head like so hard that it was painful to read. Like, there was a page that was describing the characters like scrolling on social media, and it listed everything that they saw there, and it was extremely jarring to read all of those things written so plainly in the way that they were. But I was just like, yep, that is what it feels like to scroll. That is what it feels like to go on the internet and see like all of these massively juxtaposing images and things right next to each other that all elicit massively different emotions from you immediately, one after the other, all in the space of like 5 minutes. And it was just kind of like, it hurt. Like, wow, this is the world that we're living in right now, and it's actually quite depressing. And we often can have such a like powerless feeling living in this world today, I think, which is reflected in the characters Anna and Tom. Like, even when they try to take certain actions, they kind of feel a bit futile, and like nothing really changes in the end. So yeah, I guess it did just leave me with a lot of questions and like feeling kind of down. I would have liked to have felt more hopeful at the end, but I know that wasn't the point of the book, I guess. Like, I just wish that the world today didn't make us feel that way sometimes. I guess you could take from it that if they had made more community-based actions, then something could have changed for them. Like, they are kind of oblivious to local politics and the local people around them. They don't speak the language of the country they've moved to, and they aren't really putting in an effort to learn it, which I'm sure would enhance their experience there. But yeah, I did really like this book. It's very today. I feel like everyone should read it and just see how they react to like what it's saying, because maybe it could tell you something about yourself. I don't know. That's what I've read so far this year, and I'm currently reading Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, which I borrowed from my friend who I lent the coin to. We've done a little book swap. Love that. So I'm going to keep reading, and hopefully I'll have more books to speak about in another few months. But for now, take care, have a good day, goodbye.